Welcome to your personalized deep dive. Today we're tackling NATO's 2030 initiative. You know, that big plan for the future of the alliance.
Yeah.
We've got reports, declarations, even a sneak peek into the next strategic concept. Get ready for some acronyms and some seriously fascinating insights into what's keeping NATO leaders up at night.
You know, it's interesting, this whole 2030 thing. It's not just,
Like a routine checkup?
yeah, it's like NATO taking a long, hard look in the mirror
Oh, yeah.
and asking some tough questions about its relevance.
Yeah, in a world that's
Yeah, in a world that's vastly different from 1949.
totally different. It's giving midlife crisis,
Right. Oh.
but on a global scale.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. New technologies, new threats,
Right.
even new players on the field like we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Plus, let's be honest, even within NATO itself, there have been some, let's just say,
Differing opinions.
differing opinions about where things are headed.
Right. We can't ignore all that chatter about NATO being obsolete or brain dead.
Oh. Now, while we won't point any fingers,
Yeah.
those kinds of comments definitely lit a fire under the alliance to prove its worth in the
Sort of.
21st century and beyond.
Okay, so that's where NATO 2030 comes in.
That's where it comes in.
So let's get down to brass tacks.
Uh-huh.
What's the plan? What exactly is NATO trying to achieve by 2030?
Well, the NATO 2030 agenda lays out 8 key proposals.
8.
8. And based on your submitted sources,
Okay.
it seems you're particularly interested in the role of technology.
Always a hot topic.
Always a hot topic,
Isn't it?
especially in defense.
Especially in defense.
Yeah.
You got me pegged. I am all about how technology is shaping the future. So
Okay.
what is NATO doing to stay ahead of the curve?
Well, one of the key proposals that you'll find fascinating focuses on maintaining NATO's technological edge.
Okay.
We're talking cutting-edge advancements in artificial intelligence, hypersonic missiles,
Wow.
and of course the ever-evolving world of cyber warfare.
It's intense. NATO knows that falling behind in these areas could be detrimental to its future effectiveness.
That makes sense. We can't talk about NATO without talking about Canada.
Right.
What's our role in all of this? How are we contributing to this whole 2030 vision?
Well, Canada's been a key player in NATO since day one,
Yeah.
and that continues to be the case today.
Ah.
We're actively involved in shaping the 2030 agenda and putting those proposals into action.
Hey.
In fact, Canada has already taken concrete steps in several areas, including increasing political consultations
Yeah.
and, as you mentioned, pushing for advancements in key technologies.
That's cool. It really shows that individual nations can have a big impact even within a large alliance.
Exactly.
Speaking of impact, that brings us to our first deep dive. Political cohesion.
Okay.
Now, to really understand this, we need to talk about how decisions are made in NATO,
Uh-huh.
which is through consensus.
Yeah.
So picture this, trying to get 30 people to agree on where to eat for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
That's NATO in a nutshell.
I like
Every single member country has to be on board before
Yeah.
anything happens.
That's right.
It's a lot of people.
It is. And that's where this thing called the Canada Article comes into play.
Okay.
This is Article 2 of the North Atlantic Treaty, and it highlights the importance of not just military might, but also economic cooperation and shared values,
I like it.
like democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law.
You're telling me Canada actually pushed for this to be included
Yeah.
in the treaty way back when?
Back in the day.
I love that. It shows how much emphasis we've always placed on those core principles.
Absolutely.
But let's be real, getting 30 countries to sing from the same hymn sheet
Yeah.
can't be easy.
You're absolutely right. There will always be differences of opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Especially on complex geopolitical issues.
Totally.
Yeah.
So give me an example.
One example that springs to mind is NATO's approach to China.
Okay.
Some members view China as a strategic rival
Yeah.
that needs to be contained, while others are more cautious about labeling them as such.
Right.
Finding common ground on these thorny issues is essential if NATO wants to present a united front.
It's essential
Yeah.
to the world.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and dive into our next big topic, deterrence and defense.
Uh-huh.
This is where that whole 2% of GDP on defense spending thing comes into play.
Yeah,
Right? Is that still a major focus for NATO?
it is. And Canada's contribution to that target is often a topic of discussion.
Always.
But it's crucial to understand that deterrence and defense in the 21st century go beyond just dollars and cents.
Okay.
It's not just about how much each country spends,
Yeah.
but what they bring to the table in terms of capability and expertise. So it's about
Quality as much as quantity.
as much as quantity.
You mentioned capabilities, and I can't help but think about the growing importance of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
It feels like every day we hear about another major cyber attack.
Every day.
How is NATO approaching this increasingly critical domain?
Well, cybersecurity is absolutely front and center for NATO.
They even adopted a new cyber defense policy in 2021,
Okay.
recognizing that a cyber attack can be just as damaging as a traditional military attack.
Probably.
And we saw this play out in a very real way during Russia's invasion of Ukraine, where cyber attacks were a key part of their strategy.
Absolutely. This brings up a crucial question.
Yeah.
What does invoking Article 5
Right.
look like in the digital age?
Yeah, that's the question.
Can a cyber attack,
Yeah.
especially one with devastating real-world consequences, trigger that collective defense response from NATO?
It's uncharted territory.
It is.
Yeah. The 2021 summit communique states that significant malicious cyber activities could potentially lead to invoking Article 5.
Okay.
But it doesn't lay out specific criteria
Right.
or thresholds.
Mhm.
It's a complex issue with a lot of legal and strategic nuances.
Very complex.
But it's a debate that's shaping the future of NATO.
Yeah.
And how it responds to the evolving threat landscape.
Okay, let's move on to our third deep dive, resilience. Now, this one's particularly interesting to me because it seems like it goes beyond traditional military concepts.
It does.
What exactly does resilience mean in the context of NATO? Is it simply about bouncing back from a punch, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more nuanced than just bouncing back.
Okay.
NATO defines resilience as a society's ability to withstand and recover from any kind of shock.
Oh, wow.
Whether it's a natural disaster, a pandemic,
Wow.
a terrorist attack, or even a large-scale cyber attack.
Wow.
Think of it as having a strong immune system, but for your entire country.
For your country.
Yeah.
So it's not just a military concept anymore.
No.
It's about preparing for any kind of disruption.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that essential services, infrastructure, and government functions can continue to operate,
Yeah.
even in the face of extreme challenges.
Wow.
It's about anticipating the unexpected and having the ability to adapt quickly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world where the threats are so diverse and unpredictable. But how does NATO actually go about promoting resilience among its member countries?
Yeah.
Is there like a resilience checklist they hand out?
Well, they've established 7 baseline requirements
7?
that cover a wide range of areas, from energy security and critical infrastructure protection to crisis communication and continuity of government.
Wow.
It's up to each individual country to develop and implement plans to meet those requirements, tailored to their specific circumstances.
Okay, can you give us some concrete examples of what those requirements might look like in practice?
Sure.
What kinds of things should countries be doing to boost their resilience?
One example is ensuring the security of supply chains.
Okay.
This means making sure that countries aren't overly reliant on a single source for essential goods and services,
Yeah.
which could make them vulnerable to disruptions.
Right.
Think about what happened during the early days of the pandemic, when supply chains for medical equipment and other essential goods were severely disrupted.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Diversifying supply chains makes a lot of sense.
Oh.
What are some other key areas?
Another critical requirement is protecting critical infrastructure,
Oh,
like power grids, transportation systems, and communication networks.
Uh-huh.
These are the systems that keep our societies functioning.
Totally.
And they're increasingly vulnerable to both physical and cyber attacks.
For sure.
Countries need to invest in robust security measures to protect these vital assets.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah,
It's all about being prepared for anything.
exactly.
And I imagine coordination between civilian and military entities is crucial for achieving this level of resilience.
Absolutely. Resilience isn't just a military issue. It requires a whole-of-society approach.
Okay.
We need close collaboration between government agencies, private sector companies, and even individual citizens.
Okay.
Everyone has a role to play in building a more resilient society.
All right, let's move on to our final deep dive for this part of our exploration of NATO. Climate change.
Okay.
I know some people might think this is a bit off topic for a military alliance,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling you're about to change their minds.
You're right. It might seem unexpected, but climate change is increasingly seen as a security threat in its own right.
Interesting.
It's what we call a threat multiplier, meaning it can exacerbate existing tensions and conflicts,
Oh.
leading to instability and potentially even violence.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
How exactly does climate change impact security?
Okay, well, for starters, think about regions that are already struggling with water scarcity or food insecurity.
Yeah.
Climate change can make those problems even worse,
Right.
leading to increased competition for resources
Uh-huh.
and potentially sparking conflict.
Yeah.
Then there's the issue of mass displacement.
Yeah.
As sea levels rise and extreme weather events become more frequent,
Right.
millions of people could be forced to flee their homes,
Oh, wow.
creating humanitarian crises and putting additional strain on resources.
Wow, the implications are far-reaching.
Yeah.
It sounds like climate change is a threat that knows no borders.
Precisely. And that's why NATO is taking it seriously.
Okay.
They recognize that climate change has the potential to destabilize entire regions
Ah.
and create new security challenges.
And I understand that Canada is actually taking a leadership role in addressing climate change within NATO.
That's right. Canada is leading the charge on the Climate and Security Center of Excellence,
Okay.
which aims to help NATO understand and adapt to the security risks posed by climate change.
Okay.
It's a critical initiative that's helping to shape NATO's thinking
Awesome.
on this emerging threat.
This is all incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'm eager to learn more, but maybe it's time for us to take a breather
Okay.
and let our listeners process everything we've covered so far.
Sounds good.
We'll pick up with the rest of this NATO deep dive in the
Right.
next part of the episode.
Looking forward to it.
Me too.
Taking a pause to let all this sink in sounds like a great idea. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to NATO's future.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about how climate change is shaking things up in the security world.
Yeah.
But there's another piece of the puzzle we need to explore, the strategic concept.
Huh?
What exactly is this document, and why is it so important for NATO?
Think of the strategic concept as NATO's roadmap.
Okay.
It's their grand strategy for navigating the complex world of global security. It outlines the alliance's core purpose, assesses the ever-changing threat landscape, and sets the strategic priorities for the years to come. Basically, it's the playbook that informs everything NATO does.
So who are the masterminds behind this playbook, and when can we expect to see the next edition?
Well, the last strategic concept was adopted back in 2010, so it's definitely due for refresh. The next one is slated to be finalized and endorsed by NATO leaders at their upcoming summit.
Okay.
The process is quite extensive, involving consultations with all 30 member countries, plus input from various experts and stakeholders. It's like a giant brainstorming session with some of the brightest minds in defense and security,
Wow.
all trying to anticipate the future.
I can only imagine the debates and discussions that happen behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the key things we can expect to see in this new strategic concept? Will it be a radical departure from the past or more of an evolution?
It's definitely going to build on the foundation of the 2030 agenda and those 8 key proposals we talked about earlier.
Okay.
In fact, there are 5 specific objectives
Yeah.
that are guiding the development of the strategic concept.
Okay, let's hear them. What are these guiding principles?
First and foremost is protecting NATO's core values.
Yeah.
Those fundamental principles of democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law that we discussed earlier.
Hmm.
It's a reminder that NATO is not just a military alliance.
Right.
It's a community of nations committed to upholding these shared values.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Values are the bedrock of any strong alliance.
Yeah.
What else is on the agenda?
The second objective focuses on reinforcing NATO's military power. This means ensuring the alliance has the capabilities and resources to deter and defend against any potential adversary. Think cutting-edge military technology, robust defense budgets, and a commitment to collective defense.
Strength in numbers. Right. But it's not just about military might anymore, is it? We talked earlier about the importance of resilience. Where does that fit into the strategic concept?
You're absolutely right. Resilience is a major focus of the third objective, which is all about strengthening the resilience of NATO societies. This goes beyond traditional military defense and encompasses a whole-of-society approach to preparing for and withstanding any kind of disruption, whether it's a natural disaster, a pandemic, or a cyber attack.
Right.
The goal is to make NATO members more resilient, adaptable, and better equipped to bounce back from any challenge.
It's like building a safety net for entire nations. It's fascinating to see how this concept of resilience has gained so much traction within NATO. What are the other objectives?
The fourth objective might surprise you. It's about adopting a global approach to security. This recognizes that threats can come from anywhere in the world, not just from traditional adversaries. It means NATO needs to be engaged beyond its traditional geographic borders, working with partners around the world to address common security challenges.
So it's about expanding NATO's reach and influence beyond the North Atlantic.
In a way, yes. It's about recognizing that security is interconnected and that challenges in one part of the world can have ripple effects elsewhere. Finally, the fifth objective focuses on strengthening the transatlantic bond, highlighting NATO as the institutional link between Europe and North America. It's a reminder that the alliance is founded on this partnership, and that its strength lies in the unity and solidarity of its members.
So it's about reinforcing the core of the alliance, that transatlantic connection. Now, we touched on resilience earlier, but there seems to be some debate about whether it should actually become a core task for NATO, right up there with collective defense and crisis management. What are the arguments for and against making it official?
That's a great question, and it's something that's being fiercely debated right now within NATO circles. Those who support making resilience a core task argue that it's essential for the alliance to be fully prepared for the full spectrum of 21st century challenges. They point to the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and the increasing frequency of cyber attacks as evidence that resilience needs to be front and center.
Yeah, it does seem like the world is becoming more volatile and unpredictable. What about the other side of the argument? Why are some people hesitant to elevate resilience to a core task?
Some experts worry that adding another core task might dilute NATO's focus on its traditional role of collective defense. The whole an attack on one is an attack on all principle.
Right.
They argue that NATO's primary mission should remain deterring and defending against military threats from adversaries like Russia or China. They also point out that resilience is already embedded in NATO's existing core tasks, so making it a separate task might be redundant and create unnecessary bureaucracy.
It's a tough call for sure, balancing the traditional focus on military defense with the need to address these new and evolving threats, like climate change and cyber attacks. It's a balancing act. But there's another major factor. We can't ignore the elephant, or perhaps the bear in the room,
Yeah.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine. How has this conflict impacted NATO's thinking about the future?
Oh, it's been a game changer, no doubt about it. The invasion has put a spotlight on the importance of NATO's core mission, collective defense, and deterrence. It's a stark reminder that military threats are still very real and that NATO needs to be prepared to defend its members.
So it's a wake-up call for the alliance.
Absolutely. The invasion has also highlighted the need for NATO to be agile and adaptable in a rapidly changing security environment. We've seen the alliance respond with remarkable unity and speed, providing support to Ukraine and bolstering its defenses in Eastern Europe. This experience will undoubtedly shape the new strategic concept and how NATO prepares for future challenges.
It's a reminder that the world can change in an instant, and that alliances like NATO need to be ready to adapt. Speaking of adapting, there's been a lot of talk about NATO expansion, particularly with Finland and Sweden potentially joining the alliance.
Right.
What's the latest on that front? It seems like a historic shift for these traditionally neutral countries.
It is a significant development. Both Finland and Sweden have officially applied for NATO membership, and the process is well underway. It's a clear sign of how Russia's aggression has reshaped the security landscape in Europe.
It seems like many countries are reassessing their security arrangements in light of recent events. It makes you realize that we're living in a time of great uncertainty and change. So with all these challenges and opportunities swirling around, what does this all mean for NATO's future?
It means that NATO is more relevant than ever. The alliance provides a vital framework for collective security and cooperation in a world that seems increasingly fractured and unpredictable. But it also means that NATO must continue to evolve and adapt to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's about finding that balance between tradition and transformation.
Exactly.
Holding onto the core values and principles that have guided NATO for decades, while also embracing new ideas and approaches to address the challenges of the 21st century.
You've hit the nail on the head. The 2030 Initiative and the new strategic concept are crucial steps in that direction. It's about ensuring that NATO remains a strong and credible force for stability and security for many years to come.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface of this complex and constantly evolving topic. There's always more to learn and explore when it comes to NATO and the future of global security.
It really is like peeling back the layers of an onion, isn't it?
It is.
The more we delve into NATO, the more we uncover. And the thing is, even as we're having this conversation, the situation is constantly evolving. Geopolitics never stands still.
It's a dynamic and ever-changing landscape.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it so fascinating.
Absolutely. But I think it's important for us to connect this back to our listener.
Why should they care about what's happening with NATO, especially if they're not directly involved in defense or foreign policy?
Right.
It's easy to feel disconnected from these big global issues.
That's where it gets really interesting, because NATO is not some abstract concept happening in a far-off boardroom.
Yeah.
It has real-world implications for all of us.
Okay.
The alliance plays a crucial role in maintaining global stability.
Right.
And that stability directly impacts our daily lives.
Yeah.
Think trade travel.
Okay.
Even the prices we see at the grocery store.
Wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the big picture and forget about the everyday connections.
Think about the values that underpin NATO.
Yeah.
Democracy, individual liberty, the rule of law.
Yeah.
These aren't just buzzwords.
Yeah.
They form the foundation of free and open societies.
Right.
NATO's commitment to upholding those values has a ripple effect across the globe.
So what happens with NATO is actually a reflection of what's happening with democracy and freedom around the world.
Uh-huh.
It's like a barometer for the health of those values.
You could say that. And that's why it's so important to stay informed and engaged.
Yeah.
We can't take these values for granted. They need to be constantly defended and nurtured.
Yeah.
And NATO plays a vital role in that effort.
Okay, you've got me fired up now.
Yeah.
It makes me want to do something to support NATO and those values. But what can our listener do to make a difference, especially if they're not a politician or a general?
Right.
It can feel overwhelming to know where to start.
There are actually a lot of simple yet impactful things you can do.
Good.
First and foremost, stay informed.
Mm.
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one,
Yeah.
engage in thoughtful discussions. All of those things help.
Hey.
The more you understand about the challenges and opportunities facing NATO, the better equipped you'll be to form your own opinions
Okay.
and make your voice heard.
Knowledge is power, right?
It is.
The more we know, the more we can contribute to the conversation.
Absolutely. You can also support organizations working to promote peace, security, and democratic values.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many incredible NGOs out there doing fantastic work on a global scale.
I know, right?
Even a small donation or volunteering your time can make a difference.
And let's not forget the power of voting. Choosing leaders who understand the importance of international cooperation and support a strong NATO is crucial.
Yes.
It's about making your voice heard at the ballot box.
That's a great point. Your vote is your voice, so use it wisely.
Yeah,
And remember, even small actions can have a big impact.
totally.
Sharing information on social media, talking to your friends and family about these issues,
Yeah.
even simply being more aware of the world around you. All of these things contribute to a more informed and engaged citizenry.
So you've now gotten the inside scoop on NATO 2030, the challenges, the opportunities, and the key players. But remember, this is just the beginning of your journey. The future of NATO is still being written, and we can all play a part in shaping that future.
Think about it. If NATO is redefining its purpose in a world facing so much uncertainty,
Yeah.
what does that mean for global stability? For your own future?
Those are big questions.
They are, and those are the questions we want you to ponder.
Consider this your deep dive homework.
It is.
We've given you the tools. Now go out there and explore.
Thanks for diving in with us.
Thanks for being here.